feel like finally, like, a lot of people are listening. So it is very beneficial to maybe this show. Like, oh, wait, white people are waking up to needing to be educated, to needing to be engaged with these resources that are available, such as.
I think here's the thing, right? You think it's beneficial because all of a sudden the occurrences of this week occurred and it made you aware, where I've seen that the whole time, and that's what made me create the show.
Yes.
So that's the whole difference. So I've seen it, the whole thing. I've just been watching, like, thinking that here's the whole thing in my mind's eye. Because of that, what caused me to start the show is I was in a place where I have a camera and I have a voice, and I see that there's people, minorities, who are looking for jobs in advertising, who are looking for jobs in the arts, looking for jobs and how to figure out how to get there, and they're not being spoken to. And so the only way to do that, if I see that void out there like that, and I know that I can fill it, then it's like going to plug that. It's like a leak in a boat. If you see the leak in the boat, you gotta go and be like, oh, I don't want the ship going down.
Yeah, right.
And go plug the leak in the boat. So I saw that all of a sudden it just made maybe more people aware that those needed found a niche. And like I said, I was talking to my dad and he's like, after watching Rebecca's episode, he's like, I see the niche that you were talking about. I'm like, yeah, most people didn't necessarily see it when I was explaining to them, because most people think of it's really good, you know? Like, I'll put it in a different phrase for you, right? Would you say nowadays women's rights are pretty equal, or you're feeling pretty good about it? You feel like you're respected fairly well and going into business meetings or different kind of like pitches?
Equal, no. In a much better place, feeling good about it, yeah.
Okay, so now think about that with the Me Too movement that all of a sudden happened. Everyone was like, we're feeling pretty good about this. Then all of a sudden, like, Me Too happened. We're like, oh, we still got some work to do.
Totally.
So it's kind of like what happened for Black people this week.
How do you feel right now? I mean, on a personal level, like, how are you feeling?
I am angry. I'm sad. I'm astounded. I literally just, like, in this day and age, in like 2020, I never thought I would see two guys in a pickup truck go hunt down a man running and shoot him in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind's eye, my worst possible thing of like, what's the worst thing that could happen in racism? I couldn't have imagined that. Like, if someone told me, if like before that happened, someone was like, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be spreading on the internet. Someone's going to get shot running down the street, and it's going to be on video, and it's going to be spread worldwide, millions of people. I'd have been like, psh, no way. No one's that stupid or that much audacity.
And compound that with this week with Amy Cooper and George Floyd, and it feels like it's just one after the next after the next.
Oh, here's the thing, like, that's like, and
but maybe
it's funny.
That's just because it's being filmed.
Well, it is being filmed, and I think here's the whole thing. People have been trapped inside. People are getting smarter about documenting these occurrences when they happen because everyone has a cell phone, right? The most dangerous thing, I think, out of all these is Amy Cooper. It's like, it's the subversive racism that's way more dangerous to Black people than the overt racism. You know? And again, and I'll tell you why. Think about this, where you think that you have an ally, right? You have a person who's like there for you. It's like, she voted for Hillary, right? She's quotes unquote liberal, right? But looking at trying to have equality for African Americans or Blacks or whatever you prefer in America in the workspace, right? Think about how many times if she marginalized that man in a park thinking that she was better than him and was going to call out a threat on him, how many times has she in a job, in a managerial position, when someone could actually be promoted or be the project lead, or she can recommend someone for a job, or maybe put someone on her team, passed them over? Because the only way you're actually going to go and start equalizing things is actually putting more people and more Black people in positions of power, and then you lead by example down, you know? And so that's how you go. So if she's holding that, she's that gatekeeper,
yeah,
I think of that. And also, she can go and make a phone call and weaponize the overt racism, it's like the double whammy.
I get it.
You know, it's like it's worse trouble, and the thing like that. And so it's the danger you can't see coming. Like I can see if rowdy cops are coming from me down the street here with batons and tear gas thing, I can see them and I can run the other way. It's the person who sneaks up behind my back and stabs me in the back that's probably more likely to actually kill me.
And that's what we were talking about earlier. It's why you can't you can trust white people in the service, but once you dig a little deeper, you're like, can't I? And that's got to be exhausting.
Okay, the thing that going back to what we're talking as far as like the urgency of what happened with Minneapolis and why like they arrested Derek is because of video and also national notoriety. The thing with Ahmaud, right? That happened in February.
Yep.
And so it's funny because I've been reading about it, right? Like I'd read about it. It's actually been in CNN, a couple articles and that, and they were talking about it. But they didn't have the video footage. Right? And so that'd been going on, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, you just kind of have like a feeling. I'm like, okay, maybe this guy, again, you just make the mistake, and racism, that's the mistake. You can't make that mistake or you'll end up dead. And he could have been in the wrong place.
Right? Huh? But you're guilty of it too, yeah?
What's that?
Like saying, well, maybe these, like giving the cops the benefit of the doubt.
No, I wasn't giving I wasn't giving anyone the benefit of the doubt. I was just saying like, my thought was like, the black person was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he made the mistake. And like that's what I was telling you. Like when I like go to the bank, we're gonna like it's like if I wear the homemade mask, that was the mistake I made that got me killed. So you see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. And it's like if you don't play your card right on like that, like you don't get a second chance as a black man. Like you end up dead. And so like that person, whatever they did, maybe think of that, they maybe just made the wrong mistake at the wrong intersection. And I mean, like no one deserves to be shot for like even like attempted whatever they were saying. It was like a home burglarization possibly, you know? And so I was just like, I wonder what's happening with that, because it's just kind of a weird thing. And then the video came out, and it's just funny how they just spun it so far.
They hunted him down.
So far they had spunted it. So like I was like, that went from like this person was on a construction site stealing something, and two guys stopped him and attempted arrest and shot him, to like, okay, actually he poked his head into a construction site, continued back on his way about running. They boxed him in for 4 different minutes, then hunted him from the side of a pickup truck like they were on some freaking Southern Safari, and like that, and
disgusting.
Killed him without an unarmed person. Like it's just like
white supremacy.
But it's just like the whole thing about their rationale is like you can let that person go and call 911. You can put out a description. You could follow them from a safe distance.
But
like that's
they weren't even. Nothing was happening to them. Like nothing was happening to these white people.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, like, in the rationale of like, if you really wanted to do justice or make an arrest or thing like that, like again, it comes back to what we're talking about of training. Cops
Absolutely.
Preserve life. They were not trying to preserve life.
I mean, I don't know what their intent was from the get-go. I mean, do you think it was just murder from the get-go?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, you don't shoot someone in broad daylight.
That's what I'm getting at. I guess
like they were just like, they felt like there's like, it's like, here's the thing, it's the Amy Cooper. They didn't like basically a black person was talking back to them and was an affront to them and their superiority and their power. And so that's where the white privilege comes in, because you have to check that, or like, you know, when you talk about like, you know, like options and things like that. And here's the thing, like, again, when you talk about, like, let's say you go into a place and you have a problem with the manager, or maybe like your food comes out cold, or I don't know, just something like you're in a parking garage and someone dents your car, right? You can get angry. You can get all out of control. You can get, I per se the word uppity, like that, and it's not going to get you killed. Like that, I cannot, because it can potentially get me killed. I have to think about what I'm saying. I have to work on where to measure it. I have to watch where my hands are. I have to be careful what my movements are. Like that.
Exhausting. Every day.
Yeah. Every day.
God, I have all these questions I keep trying to ask you, and then I'm just baffled at whatever your next statement is. Just because I feel like I'm continuing to take this walk in your shoes, and it's...
Ask a black dude.
Yeah. When was your earliest memory of realizing that you looked different from me or somebody else around you?
Honestly, this is a great memory, right? And this is like actually a funny thing about that. Probably the most time that I really reckon it was I was probably about 6, 7 years old, and I moved to Alaska. And it was funny because this is the thing about being curious about other people and other cultures and stuff like that. So there was this little Asian kid that lived behind me, and things like that, and he had a husky, and I had a sled. And so we literally would tie his husky up to my sled, and we would like toboggan to the thing, and like that was our thing. And like we would meet up after school every day, and we'd tie up his husky, and it was like one of those little Red Runner sleds, right?
Yeah.
And we would tie his husky, and we would like dog sled that thing, and we would paddle up back and forth, think of that. And so like literally like, but that was the first person I was like, oh, that kid looks different than me, and we're like, okay, let's tie your dog up and go sledding.
Pretty
yeah, but I mean, it's not like it wasn't a traumatizing experience. It was just like, I was like, like, you know, like the kid, because like that was the cool thing. And I think what's kind of like super interesting about that is because I was raised as a military family and we moved around a lot as a kid, like I would encounter all these different people at all these entirely different nations. Like there are like living in DC or in Alaska, there were different governments because they would have pacts with like Germany and stuff. So some of their officers would come over and train with American officers. So I'd meet different nationalities that way, and you'd meet all these interesting people in all these different languages. And it was just one of those things where like, as a kid, we knew we were moving every 3 years. And so you would meet all these different people, and you know that like a new cycle would be coming in, or you would move to a new cycle, and like you just had to go and like learn and get to know and meet and hang out with those people every 3 years. And it's just like, and it became a thing, so you didn't really think.
Yeah.
So in that, it made me really keenly aware of like different people, but also just like making friends. Like it's like, here's the thing, like you move to a new school, like I moved to a new school, 4th grade, first person there, like you make friends. You try and make friends.
Yeah.
Look at that. Like I changed high schools my sophomore year. Sucked.
Yeah, I bet.
But like we moved back to Alaska because I was in Virginia at the time, and you go on, you make friends, and like you make friends.
You make friends, and you become friends with somebody who looks very different from you.
Yeah.
And I think that is getting out of the South and moving countries, and then traveling for a career. You broaden your horizons. You open your mind to differences in different cultures. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And that just happened to me at a really young age. Like that happened to me at 7.
Yeah.
Where like for you, it might have been like out of college.
For sure.
You know, and so like that happens to people a lot later. And I think that's honestly funny, because I've never actually thought about it in that regard. Because when you think about like European kids, right? They're going to all these different countries, all these different people, speaking all these different languages.
Yeah.
And so when you think about American kids, and I think this is actually one thing I will say, if you look at the Midwest, and again, it's not a dig or thing, but they don't travel as much.
They just don't.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you have a bit of a problem with like, you know, like people understanding or thinking about people in a different way, because you have to go and experience that. And like what you have is like people that go on vacation to Cabo San Lucas or go to Hawaii, you know, like that. And like, it's still just like super Americanized. So like, you know, so it's like they're not really feeling anything different,
like,
and they're going
passive travel.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not an active member in your own travel story.
Where you have to go and like be immersed, in other people's culture, and you have to go and adapt. I think the whole thing about it is like, and that's I think a really interesting fact is when you think about it, we have taken away the ability, like you've got phones and you've got internet and you've got cable TV and you've got all these creature comforts and that. By in nature as humans, we've taken away all our natural innate abilities to adapt, because we've created an environment we don't have to adapt to. We're making the environment adapt to us.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden, if you built this whole shell around you to adapt to you, you go out of the house and like you don't think anything has to adapt to you.
And I to go off of that a little bit, I feel like even up to like 16 or 17, I would be in the moment, and because I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't really know what technology was. But now I'm not, whenever I find myself in with a lack of something to do, a bored downtime, I immediately pick up my phone and I occupy myself with something, or I turn on the TV and I'm completely occupied.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of
Black Mirror.
Yeah. Yes, Black Mirror syndrome for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the thing of like, it's like thinking about like, I can pick up a book and I can put this thing down. I think there's something to be said too. Like, people ask me what I do to relax, right? And what I do to get away from things. And like, honestly, this week, what I did to get away from, like, just like, I just need a mental break. I ride my motorcycle. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's dangerous. And oh my God, don't go too fast. And oh my God, anything could happen. But the thing that you don't realize with that is you can't answer your phone. You're completely in the moment. You're totally paying attention to everything you're doing, because you have to shift, you have to brake. Everything is like with your hands. Like it's like you can't drive and look at your phone. Think about nowadays, you can drive and pretty much look at your phone if you really want to. Like it's like driving's become so easy through automatics and stuff like that. But when you're on a motorcycle and you have to lean, you have to have balance, you're using all those senses, like of like what I'm talking about adaptation, to bring yourself back to that visceral level of like just surviving human, right? You're bringing yourself back to survival of human. And so I think it kind of resets you. And so normally like once a week I go on a motorcycle ride, because it just mentally resets me. And so I'll think about it, and like, honestly, when people are like, you could die, and I'm like, yeah, that's the thing that kind of resets me, because all of a sudden I realize I'm dying because I built up this wall of adaptation around me. Like, nothing here is going to kill me. Like literally, like nothing around here is like going to kill me. And like honestly, the whole thing about like it was humans, what I think we kind of need, every once in a while you need a moment where you're like, I could die here. Like it's like having that whole thing of fight or flight, or kind of taking your instincts, because that's where people adapt.
Absolutely, that adrenaline rush.
Yeah, and like just trying to you have to figure things out.
Yes.
You know, you have to figure it out. So all of a sudden, if like you have something to figure out, or you've reached a place of power where like someone figures something out for you, your ability, your leaning point of adaptation has become that much stiffer. You don't want to adapt. You don't care about adapting. Other people, like your thing at that point was like, you're like, people are supposed to bend to your will. And I think that's where you actually really talk to white privilege, is like people all of a sudden think that everyone's supposed to bend to their will. Like it's like if you don't travel, like it's like, think about it, if like those people had to go to Japan, all of a sudden they had to go into people's houses and take off their shoes. They had to kneel on a mat like that. They had to eat the food. They would have to adapt, and all of a sudden they would have to bend their will.
Yes.
They would bend their will to actually like understand and accommodate. And maybe in that atmosphere, because of like that family that they're staying with, they learn compassion, they learn love, it really is like you do what you like. As you gain more assets, then you can exude more power.
Yeah, right.
And that's where, I mean, here's the funny thing about like that statement, right? As you exude more assets and gain more notoriety, or maybe your job or where you hire, things like that, coming down to giving minorities positions of power and putting them within the workplace, all of a sudden, if I'm black and I'm your boss, you can't talk racist shit on my watch.
Good.
But you see what I'm saying? And so all of a sudden that starts permeating down the workforce.
Sure.
So like that. And so that starts going down because domino effect. Because they know if you're working for me and I hear it, I'm going to fire you.
You're gone. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so when you start instituting minorities into the workforce, it starts eradicating it down, because people have to, whether they like it or not, they have to learn to be better.
Do better.
So that's the thing. And then I hire an Asian person or Native American, but all of a sudden all those things where people like might have that water cooler talk thing at that, it stops them, because all of a sudden, like, what's the funny thing about it? They realize their job's at stake when minorities are possibly above them and they are part of the hiring practices. And so that's how you fix that. You actually put people in positions of power, because it's going to funnel down. Like, it's like you lead by example. If your boss is leading by the example, and this is the example that he sets, and that's what you have to do, and that's how you have to uphold yourself in your job, then you're going to do it because you want to keep your job. And by nature, that is going to filter down.
Makes sense. I have never thought of it like that. But again, I haven't thought of a lot of points you brought up in this conversation because I don't really had to.
Okay. I mean, I'll give you a clear example. Again, I was on a photo shoot, right? And I hired the whole crew.
Yep.
And it was an interesting thing of where I took the crew out to lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
And we're having a good time, and like that, and that's funny because at the time, literally, all white crew. Just the job came out of nowhere, and that's who I could hire at the time, because I really usually like to have some sort of people, but it was women and 2 guys. And as we went to lunch, people were like, "Oh, what have you been up to? What have you been talking about?" I asked the crew, and they were like, "Oh, it's like, oh, you guys need to go watch When They See Us." And across the board, as we're sitting through the table, they're like, one of them was like, "Oh, I just can't watch that. It's just like it'll make me too, I don't know, make it too uncomfortable. Like it just make me too sad." And like, and the other person was like, "Oh, I don't know, I just haven't gotten around to it." And then like that, and the funny thing about it is, because I was the boss on the shoot and paying for a thing, I was just like, I could actually say like, "You guys need to stop BSing and things like that, and like you need to go watch this." And there's nothing, because I had a captive audience, because I was paying for things.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, you have the table.
Yeah.
You have the microphone.
Absolutely.
And so a thing of that. And so like if you don't have that microphone, if you're not in the table of power, if you're not the person paying the bills, the people can walk away from the table at their leisure. But if you're paying the bills, they're kind of captive to your learning and thing like that. And so if you're using that to help them sort out, like, like literally, like I was like, "You're uncomfortable, it's gonna make you sad? Welcome to my life every day."
Yeah.
Like I was like, really, like that's like your thing? Like that's the whole thing. That's like, that is where the white privilege comes in. People are afraid of getting their feelings hurt over actual making real change.
Yep. You're not wrong.
It's like, that might make me uncomfortable. It might put me in an odd space. It might actually like make me feel sad. I might have to question some of my beliefs.
It is.
I might have to change some things about myself. I might look at myself differently. And that is such an uncomfortable space. But And that's not something I'm willing to do to make your general overall life better.
You're not wrong. I mean, it is very uncomfortable work, and you will get a lot of backlash for saying the wrong thing. But again, like, that's where I think the learning also lies.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, it's there, and there's so many people who don't see it, and that's also uncomfortable. But I think that's part of the job, is to try and bring them to the light and like have them.
But whose job? It's not my job.
No, it's not yours. Mine. When I'm speaking about this stuff, especially on social media, I mean, I have some angry white women in my DMs that are like, don't believe in. They're like, what are you talking about? What's white privilege? Like, you're making up. You are being racist by
perpetrating that notion.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And again,
so then it's I feel like it is my responsibility as an ally to let them see where I'm coming from, what I mean.
I think here's the whole thing, like, yeah, you let them see, and then like if you can't like do it, like it's like some people can't be changed, and bye-bye. Keep it moving. How do
you deal with that? How do you deal with racist, like in your face, you know they're racist, and how do you internalize, I guess, that hate? What do you do with that you inherently know that this person doesn't like you just based on your skin color, and they're right in front of you?
Honestly, I take it way down a notch, because again, I don't know what that person might do. I don't know what they may have. I don't know if that person is an imminent threat. And that's why I usually kind of assess from there. And if it is not an imminent threat, I usually try to get away from it. You know?
For sure.
Just like I'm just at a point in the thing in my life where like I'm actually like, I'm lucky enough, like, you know, like I've worked really hard, thing of that if that person around there, usually there's some way that I can get out of that situation. The hard part is people who can't get out of that situation, who are like forced into those jobs or dead in streets or everything. I work for myself, so in a lot of ways I'm really lucky in that, but I've worked really hard to get to a point where I can work for myself. There might be someone who has a job like that where they're dealing with that, and like that's where the mental strife kind of comes along. Like it's a weird, like it's really almost like a PTSD. Like it's a real thing of like, it's just of like trying to deal with that stuff every day.
I feel lucky to say I can only imagine. Like,
yeah.
I
mean, honestly, it's just something I'd have to ask my parents a little bit more about that and like that. But really, like, here's a situation like that, and like it has to be like walking away, turning the other cheek, and trying to do better. And I'll give you an example, right? Because again, here's the problem that otherwise it can get you end up dead. So, one year my parents were living in Georgia, and I came back from college, and I was driving with my dad. And we're driving along, and I needed to use the bathroom. And so we're driving along, we're passing this gas station, or about to, and I'm like, hey Dad, I need to use the bathroom. I'm like that. And I see the gas station, and he just keeps driving, and like doesn't stop. And he's like, we're not stopping there. And I'm like, okay, you know, like this is weird, thing of that. So we get along a little further, and I'm like, hey Dad, I really need to use the bathroom. And he's like, what was up with that place back there? And he's just like, before I was born, my mom had already had my sister, and he'd been stationed there. And my dad had gone there with my mom for her to go in there and either use the bathroom or get something or like that. And in the space of going in there and asking for something, the store owner spit in my mom's face. And so my mom had to come out of that gas station, get back in the car, and my dad is a big man. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, like that. And he had to will and watch that and swallow his pride after someone just spit in his wife's face and get in the car and drive away. Because if he had gone in there and done something, it could have gotten them both killed. And so that's the whole thing of that. And like I realized driving by, I was like, I fucking hate the South. I never want to come here, never want to be here, never want to live here. If someone can get away with spitting in my mom's face and like that, and like that's what I got to deal with, like, no, thank you. No, and so that's the whole thing. Like when you're like, what do you do? I'm just like, so in my mind space, I'm like thinking about that, looking at what my parents put up with to get me a better life on that. That's where I look at it and I'm like, I can do better. I have to do better. I have to be careful. I have to watch what's going on and things like that, and I have to make smart decisions. That's what goes through my mind when I deal with racists.
I'm sorry. I'm just sorry from the bottom of my heart, because I feel like I'm just sitting over here across from you telling all these stories, and my heart's just sinking and sinking and sinking, and this is not new. I'm very aware that this isn't new, that this has been going on for years and years, hundreds of years. But I feel small, and I know your entire race has felt small for a long time.
Dude, but also we have immense joy and immense pride, and we are creative, and we create things in music and art and beauty and things like that. But that's where I look at that of like the sacrifice that my parents paid. So like that, I'm like, I'll tell you another interesting story of like going the other way around, right? So when I was growing up, when we were living in Virginia at the time, and at that time, like I was like, it was like, that's when it was like yuppies were the big thing, like that. And I was just like, how do I get a job and make money and like have power and things like that? Doctor or lawyer, like things like that. And so my mom was super like, okay, like just try and stay on that path, try and stay on that path, try and stay on that path. And then I moved back to Alaska, and I fell in love with the outdoors. I loved it. I fell in love with beauty. I was already into art before, and I like got more into it in photography. And so then I'm like, I want to be a photographer. My mom was not having it. Like for years, me and my mom butted heads. Like literally, like I never had such loathe for a person. And this is my mom I'm talking about, and I love her to death. But we butted heads because she just like did not want me to become a photographer. She did not want me to become a photographer. Did not want me to become a photographer. Like I don't know. Like what are you doing when you're smart? We've done all this stuff for you. What are you trying to do? And like that was the thing. So like going to college, and I went to school for photography, it put this chip on my shoulder of like, I've got to prove a point because my mom thinks I can't be a photographer. Right? And my dad was super supportive. He was super supportive the whole time. So I get out of college, graduate college, and like my mom's like, are you going to buy a suit and do interviews? And I'm like, no, I'm going to go buy another camera body. Womp, womp, womp. Like, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to do it? How are you going to make a living? How is it going to go? Blah, blah, blah. So on forth. Keep grinding. Keep working at it. Keep going on. Years later, when I bought my first house, my mom flew out and was helping me like remodel and things like that. My mom finally breaks down on the thing on it. She's like, I didn't want you to become a photographer because I didn't think that white people would hire a black person to be a photographer, and we were so worried about you and your future and just concerned because we just didn't know if people would hire a black person to take pictures and like that. And that's why I was so bad. But actually sitting here in your house helping you, I was like, you've done it. You proved me wrong, but all that time, all that strife of butting heads was just because my mom wanted the best for me, and she didn't see the possibility of what I'd become because that's what racism had done to her.
And I'm glad it didn't have that effect on you.
Well, again, it's like it diminishes through every generation. And like it's like it's trying to solve. It's like when we sit there and like we're worried and we see the things that are happening now, there is progress, but it's like it's just going slower than people think it is, and it's like the reality of things like that. But that is the things, like that. It's like sitting here and looking at like it's like we just had our first black president, so there is progress. Like I remember sitting in Barcelona in a bar seeing the front page of Barack Obama getting elected. I was in a completely different country and I was so proud.
It was such a good day.
I was just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
you know? And like, I shit you not, I didn't think that was going to happen in my lifetime. I did not see it. I was just like, this is never going to happen. Never.
Oh, I hoped for it. I campaigned for it.
Well, that's the thing that I think that's super interesting in talking about your thing, and like, you keep it all in a hush hush, but like, you campaign for Obama. And why? What was the thing that compelled you?
I think I come from a political family. My aunt was a United States senator, and we've always had debates around the kitchen table since I've been growing up, and so that wasn't new. And I remember just I went to school at University of Georgia. Mm-hmm. I was living in Athens, Georgia, and my friend who also grew up in a political family, mm-hmm. Were just kind of fed up with how things were going with the current president, mm-hmm. and got involved with the Athens City Council and just mm-hmm. started knocking on doors.
Okay, but here's the question I have for you there, right? Yeah. What is the thing that you, as a white girl coming from the South, made you believe in a minority for a president?
I think I just grew up in our liberal family, mm-hmm. and so at the time, the current political climate just wasn't working, and I don't think I didn't look at Barack Obama and think like, he's black, he's white. Like, it wasn't like, yeah, that I think electing a black president is major for the United States of America. Mm-hmm. But I liked everything he was about. He was hopeful. Yes, we can. I just like rallied around that too. And it was just hope at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And we got it. We got there. And so I capitalized on that. And after that, moved to DC and worked even closer to him by working with this guy who I guess pretty much put on his Iowa caucus, which then obviously launched his national campaign. And it was eye-opening working in politics, what you can do to move that needle. And it was very purposeful work, but dirty work in a way. Yeah. And so I got out of it, and I've been out of it since 2013, but I think about getting back in it a lot, especially now in this current political climate. And I know you don't want to go down that road, but I think I think our current president has fueled racism, and I think he's fueled white supremacy. And I think the next step, like, yes, it is imperative to be a good ally. It's imperative to educate yourself, but it is so imperative to get this guy out of office.
Well, here's the whole thing, and I'm totally fine going down that path. My whole thing about that, and I think what is important on that, not just necessarily, it's like, here's the funny thing about it, it's not Trump, it's the idea of what he represents. The idea of telling lies, selling souls, trading humanity for profits, and just the whole thing of illicit behavior for personal gain. And I think that's the thing that's really kind of like scary and thing like that. And that's something that honestly, as a country, they really have to look at for racism and humanity. Because here's the thing, you're putting a price on humanity for what people are looking for is like big business or tax breaks. Sure. And at what point do you actually look at that and like, the price on humanity is too high? At what point? Like, what's the sliding scale? Like, where are we at right now? Like, it's obviously not enough yet. Like, how many more people do we have? Do we have to like get into more potential riots or more? I mean, like just trying to look at like trying to save lives with Corona, like, you know, like it's like, let's open things up again, but like that, like, but we don't have the right ventilators, or our PPP production is out of dated, or we can't get it, or like, you know, like that. It's like, because he shut it down, you know, like it's like he put a value on other things rather than health and humanity. And I think like the two can go hand in hand, but like it's like, but you've got to just change that percentage.
I think at the end of the day, yes, absolutely. He's just so divisive. I don't know how we went from Obama, who was so inclusive, all about bridging that gap, to this overnight. And has really, I think, we are the divided states of America. And we've never been more divided. I don't know. I've lived 32 years.
I think, again, my whole point, I think it's always been there. It's just underlying.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole thing about it, is like, how do you get... It's like funny, because you were talking about like all of a sudden it's like this wake up, and like people are like being lazy and not seeing the things in front of them, and it's not just racism. There's just like there's other things that people are not seeing, right? And so, and I'll be quite frank, and here's an example. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he was telling me about how he knows quite a few affluential black people who would vote for Trump. I'm like, I was just like, no way, there's no way. Because in my mind's eye, I'm like, there's no way any person who's black would vote for Trump. Like, how do you even
The alignment,
go with
yeah.
that?
Mm-mm.
And it's not, again, my whole thing about it is like, I think about it in humanity, right? I look about it like when the Central Park Five were going to trial, this man took out full page ads in the newspaper to have these kids executed. I'm like, these are kids, 13 to 17, like children. Like they have that, right? So as a person who's black, I'm thinking about if those were my kids and like they had gotten mixed up into that, railroaded into the criminal system, would I want a person that would like just wholeheartedly, without trial, without like full accordance of the law, to be taking out ads to say that like these children should be killed? No, that's me as a black humanitarian, right? But here's the whole thing. When I'm talking to my dad, he's saying like these people that he knows that would actually vote for Trump because they feel like they've gotten there, they worked on their own, people aren't working hard enough, these black people aren't working hard enough, they're not looking at trying to give back to the community, like I got here so other people can do it. But like, yeah, of course there's going to be some like weird just like lightning rods that make it through the system, but like overall there's that. So if those people over exceeding, they can look at that, the person that Trump is, and still vote for him, then I'm not seeing the complete problem. So then that's not on the white people. That's on like me looking at that in another community, and I'm like, what are these people seeing? And maybe it is, I don't know.
Oh.
But it's just like, but it's a different diagnosis of the problem that I thought was out there. Sure. I didn't think that problem existed.
Sure. Now it is, and it's even.
And so it's firmly on my mind, and like that. And it was like, so now to go and like work to get that out of office, where you're like, okay, I didn't figure that I had to like worry about talking to those people. Now I've got to figure out like, okay, because here's the funny thing about it. When we're talking about there's some people you can't change.
Yeah, right.
If I'm talking to my dad and he's telling me the thing, like I can't change those people's vote. So that means I have to go find other people out there to counteract these people's movements.
Let's do it.
And so like I'm just like, and this is literally just talking to him yesterday. So I'm just like, I don't know how to do that, but I need to think on it, and I need to figure it out, and I need to figure that, because here's the whole thing, right? Maybe those people, they're all not going to change, but I need to start looking at with all this and what this change and what this fire and what this kind of like explosion of reckoning has brought. Maybe there's some people on the fence post that I can change and get those people to make up for these people over here that are, again, in the Black community.
Tell me how I can help.
I don't know. I just, like I said, I'm trying to figure it out.
I'm gonna be right there with you with a clipboard because
But that's the thing, and so that's where like look, it is. It's like there's always some sort of new problem or revelation or thing that, and that's again where I think coming to the adaptability. And again, who knows? But I'll think on that. We'll say that for our next episode, I guess.
There's so much to say. There's so much to talk about. I just feel like. Getting even louder, especially as it relates to politics and our current president and registering to vote and showing up to the polls in November, just like it was back in 2008 when I was knocking on people's doors, helping people register to vote, taking them to the polls. Like I'm back.
Well, here's the thing, and then I think it's interesting looking at what you do and how you go about doing it when you're talking about working with brands. And like, I mean, I know you don't like the term influencer per se, but the thing about it is like you can actually use that in influence. And like here's the whole thing of like that where all these people right now, like during this whole thing right now, they're all talking about how Black Lives Matter and what they can do and like sign the petition and so on and so forth. Are those same brands ready to take that initiative to go and look at trying to get out and register Black voters to get those people to the polls? Like, you know, like, hey, let's see it. Like, would Nike go and like charter a bus to get people to the polls to go vote? I don't know. Like maybe that's too far, but I think of that. But I'm just saying like where like I'm over the piecemeal tokenism. We're trying to do something, but we're really just trying to look good in front of the public. I'm like sometimes like the work that needs to be done is like it's not all that glorious and it's not all that fulfilling, but it's getting the stuff done.
Absolutely. I think internally and externally, right?
Yeah. So I think like so we're like looking at that and it's like where can brands fundamentally and foundation look at educating people, doing things of that sort, getting more people involved in that, and look at humanitarian causes. You know, it's like you saw Patagonia took out that big ad on kind of like keeping bears' ears closed, right?
Yeah.
What can they do about getting voters to the voter booth? You know, like I think it's interesting to see how brands have taken that whole initiative and narrative.
Absolutely.
Right, and it's usually very specific to the outdoors, and maybe it needs to be a little bit more outer line, a little bit more outreaching in that regard. Because it's like you like look at it like a thing like Trump is looking at opening up oil fields in Alaska. He's looking at opening up. I think it was like I'm trying to think like more Forest Service lands for drilling and mining. You know, so I think like when you look at that and like if that's what you're actually really trying to do and trying to preserve the outdoors, maybe you need to look at a better idea of mobilization for taking care of that.
Absolutely. I think it's about too like at the end of the day, I think that's an important thing for me to ask and see who's actually willing to do that or maybe who's already doing that. Mm-hmm. And taking it a step further, because there's not many people doing that right now. I follow a few people who are brave and ballsy and are stepping into different spaces that are new and people haven't really broken into with losing followers and maybe also losing brand deals, but keeping to that narrative, they have turned it to where I've seen them work with massive brands, Amex, Backcountry, and these brands are allowing them to have this creative control for the sake of inclusion in the outdoors, inclusion in sexuality. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty cool to see. It gives me hope that I can do the same thing. Because I haven't pushed that envelope yet. Yeah, I mean, I've had various discussions with a few close friends and family where they've been in an interracial relationship. And I think everybody is happy for this couple. Everybody wants them to succeed, but I think they have some problems to work out within themselves. And that's ongoing work. And I think everybody just wants everybody to feel comfortable, because everybody's a good person and a good human, and everybody has fun together. But yet there's this like elephant in the room that I feel like just needs to be addressed, like it does in any type of situation. Like, just talk about it openly. And I feel like I don't know, I think for some people involved it's harder said than done.
And here's the whole thing, and that goes on both ends. And I'll tell you why. When you enter into an interracial relationship, there is an unknown of what lies on. Like, you could be in love with that person. You can totally feel for that person. You can totally understand any of that. But you don't know what comes with their family. And you don't know what comes with the surroundings about that.
Got it. That
right?
makes sense.
And so within that, and obviously you have all these different conflicting things that are going on of, obviously right now where Black people are like trying to deal with white privilege, where race fits into different things, and everyone wants to get along, but obviously there's some deep-seated damage going on, right? Part of that fear can be from, like obviously you're talking about this guy, and it's a trust issue thing. It's like, because here's the thing, you might have like all this trust you think in this person. You might even think you have this trust in this person, but you don't, because you're kind of scared, like they feel like family and it feels like home and things like that, but you don't know for sure. And I think the whole thing that's kind of like hard is like, no one wants to jump in on both feet on the unknown,
right? Because
you don't know for sure, and that's the scary part. But to understand what the scary part is, you got to jump in with both feet. So it's this catch-22, and like that's the thing on both sides, right? And so then you look at it, and you're looking at like, what are the qualms of like, what's my family gonna say? What's their family gonna say? What are we gonna have to deal with in the future, in culturally speaking, out in the world? Because here's the thing that's right now, right? Before all this happened this week, you felt pretty safe about going out in the world like this, right? But now let's say like your friend who's dating this person, who's dating this Black man, is like, maybe someone's just 100 yards off on the thing, and the guy's bird watching, and he runs into an Amy Cooper, and all of a sudden, like, they're like, it's scary because it's dangerous. Where all of a sudden, like, you didn't think about that danger when you walked into that park together, but all of a sudden, there's this underlying danger of like, if you kind of even just step a little apart, thing at that person might be dealing with a different danger than maybe you might have. And so the thing too is understanding like that person's fear of like dealing with that Amy Cooper and like that, where like she might run to rush to defense of that and like go get in that lady's face, because that's how like, it goes in that, but he can't, because she called and like he'd get hurt, and so that changes the dynamic of their relationship. So on his thing, he's actually saying like, hey, chill out, like this kid like and badly, let's just keep it moving. But this person, because they love them so much, is telling them like, no, I'm not standing for this, I'm dealing with this, like what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like friction right there.
Yes. Yeah, I see it.
And I'll tell you a funny story like that, okay, right? One of the things I was talking to my dad about with yesterday was about the situation going on and like the world being unfair and being unfair to relationships and that. And my dad, he kind of related to me, like, because I forgot about it for my prom. So for my prom, I went with this girl who I've been dating, like it's been like a long time, probably like 9 months. Think of that. We've been dating for a while, like, and like it was like one of those things where like her family, I'd met them, I'd known them, thing like that. I'm like, yeah, they weren't exactly the nicest, most cordial to me, otherwise I set them at that. But nice enough, you know, like whatever. And of course, as prom came along and I asked my girlfriend to prom, they wouldn't let her go with me.
Wow.
And so my dad, all of a sudden, like with that thing of having to like look at that, and this is where like the whole thing of like the trust thing, my dad said that was one of the hardest things for him to deal with because he just saw how sad I was about that, because all of a sudden my girlfriend's family didn't see me as human enough to go to prom with. So it was a big thing in our family. But we outwitted those people.
Tell me more.
My dad and another friend of mine who was white went and picked up my girlfriend in my dad's car, totally drove off, thing of that, and then we came back to my place, took pictures of that, totally went to prom, the whole 9 yards, thing of that, because they just met this other guy and thought that was the guy who was asking, took her to prom. And then the next morning, because we like actually stayed out overnight and that, totally lame, but totally sucked. But I drove up in the car and she just got out of the car and like went to the house. So didn't walk her to us. They were like super pissed, like, why didn't that guy boy walk you to the door? Thing like that. But like to this day, it was super funny because I like got back to the house like that, and like they still had pictures of them in the prom together on their wall.
Oh,
just died laughing.
Oh my god. That is.
But my dad and I were just howling, laughing about that yesterday, dying. He's like, yeah, you know, I got thinking, and I can't believe you actually talked me into having one of your friends drive, because my dad at the time, he had 300ZX. And he was like, let one of your friends drive my sports car to go pick up that girl, or like that. But just like, just the thought of like for years having that prom picture of just them and her and some random guy, just like, it's just, and that's the thing. It's just like, you can be smarter. You can outthink them. You can make things, if you really want something and where I really care. And like, I mean, like it was a loving relationship. You can make it happen. But the thing about it is like, you never know. And like, that's the whole thing. You never know what's going to be the outcome of people's deep-seated racist values when things change or dynamics come up. And so that's the fear that they're probably having, is trying to have that with both and figure out and navigate the thing. But the funny thing about it is, you just have to have faith in each other that you can figure it out. And that was the whole thing. Like my girlfriend totally went with it. Like, you know, and like, she's just like, okay, this is totally crazy, but we're going for it. And we did it, you know, and like we pulled it off. And like for years, I think she told them years later.
I was going to ask, did she ever tell them?
Yeah, I mean, they found, like, but I just like, but it was just the funniest thing of just like, you figure out a way to do it. You figure out a way to make it happen. You deal.
I love it. You're determined, but I can't help but to think like that is such a bittersweet story.
Yeah, like literally I'd forgotten about it and I never knew, because my dad kept such a strong face. He kept such a strong thing, and like literally like just imagine like having to go ask your parents to go help you out thwart the racists.
I don't know your parents, but I love your parents.
You know? Like it's just like, okay, got this situation. And this is like me at 17. Like, you know, like this isn't like some like me being an adult like now. It's just like trying to think like this could have gone so wrong.
So wrong.
So wrong.
So friggin' wrong.
You know? And so, but we pulled it. And we still dated for a while, like actually into college, and it was super funny. But like that was just a great. But I mean, that's where like you.
Family dynamics.
Well, it's just like, I think here's what happens, and I think here's the funny thing about that when you're so young and so naive and like that. You aren't jaded. You aren't as jaded as much thing at that. I think as you get older, you get more jaded, and that makes you less apt to try and like, okay, we're gonna figure it out. You're just like, oh my god, this is just exhausting because I'm tired.
Yeah, it was a little bit simpler back then.
Well, not even that. It's just like, it's not even some simpler like that. It's just in your mind and your youth and thinking that, you haven't been so beat down.
Yeah, exactly though. Like,
You know?
it's simple in the fact that like you didn't have to.
Like, this is like years now, like dealing with it. Like, I'm thinking, like, at the time then, I was just like, you didn't,
Wow.
you know.
Prom. Our proms were very different.
Honestly, probably not that much, except for that part.
That's insane, but like, I mean, it's like, it's a hilarious story, but it
Hilarious. Like, me and my dad were crying, laughing yesterday on the phone.
but it also, I mean, I gotta be honest with you, it hurts my heart. It does, because like, the fact that some girl's parents wouldn't let her go to prom with you. Like,
I mean, it's happening all around the world right now.
I know.
It's
But it's bitter. It's all bitter. Yeah.
Again, or not, because I had a great time. We had a great time. Like, it's like, at the end, we solved it, we figured it out, we made our way around it, and we still had a great time, enjoyed it. Whatever. We didn't let them win.
You're the coolest.
You know?
Do you see a world where racism doesn't exist?
No, I think that will always exist.
Do you see a world where we will one day value or celebrate racial diversity?
For sure. And I think here's the whole thing, like, it's just like, man is just like drawn to conflict. You know, like, there's always like, there's just like some war or sore cause or thing of that, and it's usually by people who don't want to misunderstand each other and don't want to get to know each other.
Yes.
And like, it's like, it's been since the dawn of time, through different races, different religions, different creeds, thing of that. So I think that's always going to be there. I don't know how it will. I think it will diminish. You know, I think it can diminish. But I don't know how. I don't know how yet. I don't even think of that. But I just like, I mean, people just love getting into fights. Like, there's just like some sort of like trait within humans that like they just have to do that. I think I think that's the thing, and I think you can train that out of people, or you can figure out a different thing. I mean, honestly, you know, it's a great thing about that, and kind of like what's been missing right now. Sports. I think there's a way to go about friendly competition and create that, and create sportsmanship within that and still be able to go battle it out in these different kind of respective fields like that, where people get it out of their system. I mean, like, maybe that's a great example of the Olympics, but that's kind of gnarly, because then like, the thing that sucks about the Olympics is then it's become so much money has become involved in it, like the whole Russian doping scandal of like 2012, like, or maybe it was 2016. I can't remember.
Maybe it was 16.
I think it was 2016, because it was Sochi, where they were like doing the doping there.
Yeah, that went well. Sochi.
So I think like on that stage and on that level, if you can bring back a bit of prestige and like healthy competition in those realms, and maybe like worldwide sports, like, you know, like soccer and women's soccer, like I've seen the world stage where like it goes in there and you give something people to cheer for and cheer and root for, and then still be able to, at the end of the day, like, be able to shake hands. I don't know. Maybe that could kind of displace that a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know?
Remember sports? Remember shaking hands? Feels like a long time ago when we could do that.
Oh my god. I literally, like, it's exhausting.
It was exhausting. And I'm sure after this week or
like,
maybe.
I really just want to have sports back. I'm like,
it's been a while.
I saw the Jordan documentary and I was so fired up. I'm just ready to go thing.
Best thing to come out of quarantine.
Yeah, our face mask stands.
I didn't see that one coming.
No, I don't know. Like that. I don't know. Yeah. Wow.
Or this whole revolution, it is fiery, and I think as much as that George Floyd had to die for it to happen. I mean, I feel like we're getting somewhere. Maybe that's me being naive. Maybe that's me not, Realizing
the thing that I would put in, I put it like that, and I've changed a little bit of the narrative of that. This whole sense of awareness helps show that George Floyd didn't die in vain.
Correct.
And the whole thing about that, but the whole thing has been coming as like, it's like comes down to Sandra Bland, the Trayvon Martin, the Ahmaud Arbery, the Breonna Taylor. So it's been coming for a long time.
For sure.
And I think here's the whole thing, like it's just like Black people have gotten to the point that their cup has gotten full and it's just started to spill over in like a mess. And like the whole thing about it is like white privilege is the thing that filled that cup.
For sure.
And I think the thing to take away from this, and I think the thing to end on a good note of that, is like having people understand, yes, racism does still exist, but also love still exists. And so if you look at that, you can look at which path you want to go down to go and fix that. And you can choose now. You can choose. You can look at that and understand, like, okay, there are these two paths that are aligned, like in very different places. And now, where I just wasn't even paying attention, I was just meandering along, just like bull in a china shop, just like whatever. You've got these clear paths now, and you can choose that. And so choose wisely. You know?
Absolutely.
Choose wisely, and let's see what we can do there.
Wisely and loudly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you for having me on and for this discussion.
No problem.
I think I think there is such a symbiotic relationship in this and having these conversations, because you are helping me a great deal. I don't know how much I'm helping you on your side.
Honestly, I just think here's the whole thing. By you using your voice and getting it out to people who need to hear that stuff, that's what this is about. So in regards of that helps me, that helps other people, because it just makes people more aware of a problem that they didn't even think or know exists, and then also didn't want to solve.
Sure.
And all of a sudden we're planting this quite firmly in their face, and you're saying, you have to walk the path. You have to figure out the path you're going to go. And that's what we're doing.
Mindfully, so mindfully, yeah, and not aimlessly. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, thank you. There you go. Boom. You got an opinion? We'd love to hear it. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the Social Studies Show on our YouTube channel.